When I used to be a Jehovah's Witness, I learned that the elders took their power so far as to ask if we even had improper thoughts, and we were obliged to explain ourselves and tell them what we do in the privacy of our own home. Now, we're talking about elders who are just random men. Most of them are window cleaners, or just, maybe an accountant, maybe some sort of a manager, but basically just a normal person without any training, qualifications to deal with people's mental health or physical health, and certainly didn't have the qualifications to be a relationship coach or, a psychiatrist or a therapist. So those sort of things are very common amongst Jehovah's Witnesses, where they all seem to have almost like the idea that they're all powerful and they can ask you invasive questions or even tell you how to do parenting. Even if they never had children themselves, they still feel like they're qualified because apparently they have the authority from the Bible to tell you what to do and how to think and how to live. Now, looking back at that, I can see the absolute horrific implications that brings and just how wrong, not only morally, the whole setup is, but also how unethical. And as someone who is now doing a psychology degree at a university, I've actually learning a lot about ethics, because to become a therapist or someone who is put in charge of people's mental health, it's actually incredibly important that there are certain standards, rules, and non-negotiables that is stuck to. Now, since also leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, I've had to learn what my boundaries are, what my values, what my actual core identity is, because deconstructing from a cult isn't as simple as just not going to a meeting or no longer reading the Bible. You're having to rewire your whole brain. You have to kind of undo the false identity you've been put on, that's been put on you, and find what is your core self, what is your concept of self, your identity, what are your own beliefs and values. And also things like knowing what a boundary is when you've come out of a cult where there were no boundaries, at least not with the elders, or having to accept whatever the governing body said and wrote as an absolute law, and there's no room for questioning anything. So the question what boundary is, when everything was so invasive and you could have random people from the congregation come and just because they're your brother and sister feel entitled to spy on you or to question you or tell you what you're doing wrong and what you should or shouldn't be doing, which is absolutely crazy when I look back at it. No wonder so many witnesses suffer with mental health issues and come out, when you come out of a cult, you feel absolutely messed up. And a boundary to me is you can't have a boundary unless you actually know yourself, unless you know what your core beliefs, what your values are, what you actually stand for, and what is acceptable to you, and what you will accept or not accept. So boundary isn't even about, oh, I'm going to tell someone what my boundary is, because at the end of the day, the only person who needs you to know your boundary is yourself. You're supposed to know your boundary and follow it. You can't tell people what your boundary is because that's not a boundary. So, for example, just something simple like if you don't like being late and if someone is constantly late, well, you can tell them, but it's not going to change anything if you don't follow through. So if you say, if you're late, I'm not going to wait for you, but then you wait, well, you're not observing your own boundary, so it's not really a boundary. So again, looking back at what the elders do, the whole role that the elders play in Jehovah's Witnesses organisation, it's absolutely horrifying, because it is, I would compare it to like being as invasive as when, having grown up in communism, people were told to spy on each other and to report each other, and you had to constantly watch what you're saying, what you're doing, because basically you didn't want to be sent off to Siberia, would you? So questioning the ethics of Jehovah's Witnesses organisation is extremely controlling, extremely manipulative, extremely unethical. The things that go off there, how you are, well, you used to have to report the hours spent knocking on doors, but then to find out that the elders also can mark you as spiritual or not spiritual, and make decisions based on someone's opinion, one of like the 5 men, however many elders there are in the congregation. It's incredibly wrong and humiliating. So if you or someone you know are currently studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, please think about it seriously. Is that the life you want to lead? Now, myself, when I was studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, I was only 14. I was very naive. I didn't know anything about the witnesses. My mom, she and myself, we just thought it's a group who helps people understand the Bible. That's all it was. Thought it was an offshoot of Christianity. And unfortunately, 2 decades later, I obviously realised that was not the case, that it's an absolute bonkers, high control, doomsday cult who absolutely do not respect people, because they don't. If they go and knock on the doors and you tell them you're not interested, they're still going to try and convert you, and they're still going to come back 6 weeks later, keep knocking until, even if you get angry and, tell them to F off, they'll still come back because they don't respect what you say. They think you don't know any better. So going back to, if you or someone else you know are studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, please be careful what you're getting yourself into, and do your research and make up your own mind. Like, I'm not here to tell you what to think or what to do, because it's not my place, but also it's not their place to tell you how to live your life. So make good choices.